What's up, y'all? Peace. So, I'm a wrestling fan. I know wrestling is fake. Um, the reason why I watch it is it's because the creativity of it, the storylines. I used to write stories as a kid, so the storylines, the costumes, the colors, everything. That's what turns me on to wrestling. Actually, what made me kind of curious about wrestling was watching a wrestling cartoon. Now, I knew wrestling existed when I was a kid, but I used to watch the cartoons first because Hulk Hogan was already out there on TV and everything. You know what I'm saying? So from the cartoon, I actually started watching Superstars of Wrestling, and then late '86 Wrestling Challenge started coming on Sunday morning. So that's how I got into it. And I'm gonna talk about the WWE releases, the new releases. And I'm gonna start by saying that I am aware that the history of wrestling started, the history of commercial wrestling and wrestling on TV started because it started by a lie. It was started by a lie. Promoters were telling everybody that wrestling was real. You could come watch it. You can bet. Never telling anybody that it was scripted already. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, but that's the way it started. That's the way promoters, wanted it to do. So it became, something that people can make a living off of, you know what I'm saying? Instead of doing real wrestling, which probably doesn't make as much money, You got these promoters behind it, and they're kind of like almost like football promoters, they just promote the shit out of it, do the commercials, and by the '80s, it took off. It just Vince McMahon, did what he did, right or wrong. He did what he did. He bought out a lot of smaller companies. He put it on TV, syndicated, or everything. He made it grow. And by the time I started watching their roster was like amazing. They had like over 100 superstar wrestlers. Like every week with somebody different wrestling. It was crazy. As a creative kid, you're watching this, and I'm like, oh wow, damn, And then I got turned on to NWA like around '87. So I knew about NWA, and that's when I found out Sergeant Slaughter was real. At first, I found out, that I thought these were cartoons. I thought Jimmy Snuka was a cartoon character. I thought Junkyard Dog was a cartoon character. And then when I watched it on TV, I'm like, oh shoot, these guys are real. And I thought Sergeant Slaughter was just a cartoon character in G.I. Joe. And then I seen the NWA tape that my uncle had, and I'm like, oh, he's a real character in wrestling. But so a lot of people, I guess, were making a lot of money, and it just became a big business. And then it was something to enjoy watching on the weekends in the morning time. Like it was just part of my childhood, And and it was fun to watch. And some of it became kind of influential because what Hulk Hogan was saying, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, that's something that every people should do, But I didn't know, as a kid, you don't know about the business side of the wrestling. I didn't know much about, the female wrestler that got screwed, that they purposely made her lose, even though she actually won. And if you look at the tape, she actually won. They actually called it for the other female. And that's when she left. I seen her from that first time, and I can't remember her name, and then I never saw her again. Now I know why. But we didn't know about the business like that. We didn't know much about Vince McMahon. Over time though, WCW came around, and then you start seeing how a lot of wrestlers are going down there, and then you start seeing, Vince McMahon kind of putting himself in a wrestling role more even though he was a promoter. And I was never really a fan of that. Now, this was way later on now. We're talking the Attitude Era. And the one thing I noticed was that one thing I found out later on was during that era, he made the company go public in the trading block. So it was a private company, then it became public. And once that happened, I noticed that he got rid of the tag team division almost. I mean, there was no tag. I mean, it was basically no tag team division. You just had Edge and Christian and the Hardy Boys and maybe the Dudley Boys. And these are, these people and the Road Warriors. And they, these people are trying to make a living, I understand what WCW did. And then Vince actually bought WCW eventually. All right, cool. But I noticed that certain things were missing in wrestling. As far as tag teams, as far as even, they have factions, but then you didn't see much in the early 2000s. You see much of like the 6-man tags or whatever. And we gotta remember, you're here to entertain people. You also have the creative side of it. I understand the business, but it to me, with the one thing I noticed, was that Vince McMahon was a shrewd businessman. And then, late as years go by, you start learning about how Vince McMahon was buying these other companies, and then he bought WCW, and then Donald Trump is in the story script, and nobody likes him, and so I'm like, is Vince McMahon a Republican? And then I started seeing Vince McMahon in that business for what it is. You know what I'm saying? It's a pure capitalistic business. This is the American side. I'm from New York City, so this is how a lot of people do business. That's how Trump does business. He just fire people. You don't like it, give them a month, fire them. And little by little, you see Vince McMahon start to do that with his own employers, his writers, and his wrestlers. But it wasn't until the pandemic where you really see like the shrewdness of it, like the way he did it. Okay, this wrestler is not getting along with everybody. You got to get rid of him, push him. Okay, fine. You know what I'm saying? But just the way he did it, now, because you don't really have a show that kind of builds up wrestlers, right? So you got rid of wrestling channels, you got rid of Superstars of Wrestling, which means a lot of people lost their jobs, right? At the development area of wrestling. So, okay, so the pandemic happens. First, he releases Luke Harper for no reason. So he's been doing this for a while. And that was to me, that was a shot in the heart, because I was such a big fan of the Wyatt family. And I was hoping down the line there'll be like a big scene between the Wyatt family and the Shield. But then, they had Seth Rollins do what he did. He broke up the Shield. But then, and then Luke Harper is released, I believe in 2019. He goes to AEW. He passes away there. Rest in peace. And again, I understand wrestling is fake, it's scripted, but it's also a business, and people want to make a living off this. A lot of people love wrestling. They see it as not just a way of living, but a form of kind of like an art form, and the creative side, and the characters, and the costumes, and I mean, it could be beautiful, but wrestling, as I said in the beginning of this video, wrestling started based on a lie. It was based on convincing people that it was real, and then people who had gambling habits started gambling, and it made it kind of dangerous. Like, if people didn't really want you to win and you won, fans were known to kind of like go up, from what I've heard, go up to wrestlers and threaten them and all this, and even try to physically attack them. It was crazy. But it's a business, and in America, where we have the Constitution, we also have fair work practice laws in this country, where people have to be treated fairly. You know, this is not an era anymore where, like my grandmother, she had to work from 8 in the morning to 8 at night. She was probably making $3 an hour when she was working in a knitting factory. Those days are gone. Unfortunately, the knitting factories are gone too, because they didn't want to pay Americans the proper money that they were making when they were making the clothes and stuff like that. Because that's what my grandmother did. She made the purses, clothes, scarves, everything. She sewed. And a lot of those places, that it was mostly, at least the place that I went to visit when I was a kid to see my grandmother during the week after my hospital visit, was in a knitting factory. It was all mostly Puerto Rican women, you know what I'm saying, her age. So and as a progressive, I have to speak out on this, even though wrestling is part of pop culture, but I also believe in treating workers fair. I'm a progressive person. I'm against the two-party system, so I have to speak out on this because it's just so wrong. And so during the pandemic, which everything got locked down, which I was against. I'm against everything getting locked down. I was against the forced vaccinations. In my opinion, it should be a choice. But be that said, I'm not telling anybody not to get vaccinated. So don't take my video down. The way Vince McMahon started, I mean, it is what it is. You say releases, I say firings, because some of these wrestlers were on a mainstream script line. They were like on active. They were like about to do something, and then they just got released. And some of them weren't. Some of them weren't really getting pushed. Now I can't remember the timeline. There's so many releases during and after the pandemic, but AOP, AOC, those were two different tag teams. AOC was down with AJ Styles, who recently retired, right? Aleister Black, and I'm talking about the first wave. Naomi, Bray Wyatt eventually got fired, even though he was outselling Roman Reigns and merch. They fired him. They let him go. And I don't know. I believe this was before TKO bought WWE, but I'm not sure. So then, and then again, I'm just going by. I'm not going by the timeline because there was so many releases every year that they were doing. They were doing this like twice a year. A lot of writers, a lot of producers were laid off. It was to a point now where the only superstar wrestlers, and I can't forget the Hurt Business, one of my favorite factions of all time. So it was to a point where at that time, Monday Night Raw and SmackDown were both 3 hours. You basically saw the same wrestlers wrestling every week, and there weren't a lot of matches. And of course, and then around that time, he fires one of the members of Heavy Metal. So, and the Viking Raiders eventually were fired. So you basically don't have a tag team division. I know I'm forgetting a lot of other wrestlers. But yeah, that's basically what was going on. And then Karrion Kross gets fired. So this has nothing to do with bringing up NXT, because Karrion Kross came up from NXT and then they fired him. And so in my mind, and not just as a fan of wrestling, but as looking at the business, the practices, the way they were releasing these wrestlers, and it didn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That's not good business. What? why would you? And I know Triple H and Vince McMahon were involved on these firings. Everybody is to blame for this, right? But I'm like, why would you fire Bray Wyatt and the Hurt Business? They was making noise, right? Bray Wyatt was selling the merch, so it couldn't. What was the reason? And they never gave a reason. They never gave a reason. And every year, twice a year, at least for 3 years maybe, they fired a lot of wrestlers and a lot of writers. And it had nothing to do with making room for NXT big superstars because they fired Naomi. They fired Aleister Black. What's the point of bringing somebody up from NXT and then firing them? That's not good. That's not good practice. It makes a lot of people not want to show up for the WWE. It makes a lot of wrestlers not want to wrestle for the WWE. It makes a lot of producers, a lot of writers not want to work for the WWE. So then the scandal happens, right? I don't want to, I'm trying to like kind of move on a little bit. But then the scandal happens with Vince, where the stuff comes out that he cheated on his wife, that he had an affair with a female staff or one of the female wrestlers, or made her have sex with Brock Lesnar, or whatever that situation was, which was terrible. And Brock Lesnar actually leaves, and then he comes back. I'll get to that. But so then Vince McMahon is forced to step down, but not really. He's still trying to fight it. His daughter, I'm pretty sure, is very mad at her father. But it was Triple H that also was involved in firing a lot of these wrestlers. Triple H could have told his stepfather, no, Vince, I'm or maybe not. Maybe truly is, maybe he is his daddy, his stepdaddy. But and I'm just thinking also, Triple H never had to worry about being released because as time went on, we all know Triple H ends up with Stephanie McMahon in real life. They actually got married, had kids, so he didn't have to worry about being released by his stepfather. His stepfather would never fire his stepson. So it's just when you look at that, and you look at all the other wrestlers that were being released at that time in the Attitude Era. Test was another one. The vampire wrestler, I forgot his name. All great, to me, great creative wrestlers, or were let go. Triple H didn't have to worry about being let go because he slept with respectfully, he got in with with the boss's daughter. You know what I'm saying? With that said, I think Triple H, so Vince McMahon steps down. Really, for real, eventually he steps down. And then Triple H completely takes over. Stephanie McMahon kind of disappears. She's involved, but not really. TKO comes in. So TKO, I know they mentioned the names of the people who run TKO. There's 3 people. One that really controls it, and I think The Rock was involved in TKO. So I think he had like a partnership. Whatever, right? And I should remember the names, but for some reason I don't really care about remembering their names. So Triple H completely takes over, and he brings a lot of he tries to bring, and he does, at least half of them, brings back a lot of the superstar wrestlers that were fired by his stepfather. And I was like, oh shit, yeah, this is amazing, That was amazing. So Kyrie was another one that I don't know if she was released or she left. I think she wanted to leave. But she comes back at that time, and he brings back at least the ones that he could bring back that were fired. So he brings back Naomi, he brings back Aleister Black, he brings back AOC, he brings back AOP, he brings back the Viking Raiders, he brings back he couldn't bring back everybody, but basically, Andrade was fired, he brings him back. Man, who else? Karrion Kross and his wife. So he brings as much as he could. He brings a lot of these guys back. Cool, we're all with it. Tag team division is stacked. You got the newer superstars from NXT doing their thing, and you still got the mainstays like Seth Rollins, Randy Orton, Roman Reigns, the whole tribal chief family divisions and everything. So all that is dope. And it was all good. It's all good until they released Karrion Kross again, his wife. So my first question was, what was the point of bringing back Karrion Kross if you were gonna let him go again? What was the point? Now with these recent releases, right? Aleister Black gets released again. His wife gets released again. Vega. The YA6 gets released. Motor City Machine Guns gets released. And they haven't been in the WWE that long. One of I believe one of the Chelsea Green's female security wrestlers, I believe, got released. Kyrie gets released. The hell, right? One of my favorite female. I love the female Japanese wrestlers. And I know he released some other NXT superstars. And I heard what Bully Ray had to say. I was waiting for Wrestle Talk to come on to finally speak on it. They did. And a few other YouTube content creators. And so here's my opinion. What was the point of bringing back Aleister Black? When they released Karrion Kross last year, they released AOC as well and AOP. So you bring AOC, AOP, and Karrion Kross back and his wife back to get them released again. What was the point? That's just freaking stupid. That doesn't make sense. If I was a business owner running a professional wrestling company, I would never do that. I would never do that. I will make sure I have enough writers, and I will make sure that everybody. First of all, if I was running the WWE, I would bring back Superstars of Wrestling and Wrestling Challenge, and bring back the development, and bring back the squash matches, and develop wrestlers and make them have long careers. And by the way, you're seeing all these wrestlers getting injured left and right. You didn't see wrestlers getting injured like that back in the day. At least I don't remember seeing that. I used to watch wrestling every single day because they were doing mostly squash matches, and then they'll do a house show once a month, or maybe more than that, once a week, probably. And then once a month they'll do like Saturday night's main event or Friday night's main event. Then they only have 3 pay-per-views. So I think that's why, with a few exceptions, that's why most wrestlers didn't get injured, because they didn't have to work so hard as much. Now I know some people are gonna say, working. What do you mean you working hard? You gotta work hard. You're already working. You're building your character up. You're building your character up. You're showing Vince that I should be here, slowly but surely, and there's no rush. There's no push. There's okay. Let these guys build. We got these other main eventers, and we're gonna book them, and then you have one main event match, and that helps your tag team division, because you could build up more tag teams that way. That's why in the WWE you had so many tag teams. You had the Killer Bees, you had the Wild Samoans, you had Demolition, you had Strikeforce, Can-Am Connection before that. You had the Hart Foundation, you had the Rougeau brothers, you had the British Bulldogs, the Islanders, You had eventually King Harley Race and Hercules became tag teams partners. Um, and then eventually Hercules and How Cool, because I think Harley Race went back down south. Uh, and a bunch. There was a few other tag teams I can't remember, but you had quite a few. And and there was no rush, there was no push. But even now, looking back at it, now I'm saying to myself, damn, what happened to the Killer Bees? You know what I'm saying? Like the Killer Bees came in 86, I want to say, 87, 88. And then by 89, they were gone. Like, what the hell happened? So I'm beginning to believe that Vince never was a big fan of tag teams. You know what I'm saying? That's on top of whatever TKO and Triple H feels about tag teams. Maybe with TKO it's different. They don't see any money in tag teams. But I think for Vince, I guess it was easy to sell solo wrestlers than it was for tag team wrestlers. I think that's weak. I think that's weak. Um, so what was the point of bringing Aleister Black and his wife back? So now they're going. One of my favorite WWE wrestlers. I thought they were gonna make magic with him. I mean, in my head, I'm like, man, if I was a promoter, or if I was even a wrestler, I knew with that kind of character, I could go so many ways with it. But if I was a writer and a promoter, there's so many ways I could push Karen Cross. It was so amazing, but that's the problem. So Vince already set up the WWE to fail even when he stepped down years ago. So he got rid of all the squash matches shows. He got rid of Wrestling Challenge. He got rid of the Superstars of Wrestling. So now there's no shows that promote the mainstay wrestlers. Promote them slowly, build them up. Everything is a rush now. And then you make your company go public on the trading block. So now there's more pressure. There's more money to make, more investments, and I just think it ruined the business. I think it did. If you look at it at the timeline of that, it even ruined the Attitude Era. The Attitude Era wasn't bad. But there were certain points of the Attitude Era where it got corny because you barely had a tag team. Where were all the tag teams? You know what I'm saying? And it was just weird and it was goofy. At the end, to me, the Attitude Era started with the Nation of Domination, DX, and the Hart family. Once you screwed Bret Hart, once you got rid of some of the other people, it became kind of goofy. It became kind of corny. And you still had some great matches even there, but it was like, okay, a lot of your superstars went to WCW. They all got brought off. But where was the younger guys, the development talents and stuff like that? Where I remember right before and right after the WWE went off TV, regular TV, they weren't debuting anybody. Then when he went off TV, I heard that the Big Show signed with the WWE, which I thought was dope. And then it came back on, and you see, and I'm liking some of the people that's still technically the Attitude Era, 1999, 2000. But then you get rid of Test, you get rid of that vampire wrestler, you get rid of a few other guys, and I didn't like that. I didn't like, and so now we talk fast forward to now. So now you get rid of Aleister Black after bringing him back. You wasn't pushing him the right way. You wasn't pushing Karrion Kross the right way a year before that. And Karrion Kross is a champion. He's championship material, hands down. AOP is that I could definitely see. Again, as a creative person, if I was a writer, I could definitely see AOP as tag team champions. I could see AOC were tag team champions, but I could see them tag team champions again. And and it didn't make sense. A lot of this stuff didn't make sense to me. You know what I'm saying? And so you bring those tag teams back, right? So what was the point of bringing AOP and AOC back? What was the point? And I'm saying AOP. Maybe the names are ANP. I'm not too sure. But you guys know what I'm talking about. What was the point of bringing all those guys back last year? And then you this year, just recently on Friday, you released Aleister Black again. You released Motor City Machine Guns. Motor City Machine Guns was the bomb. Like if you're gonna build your tag, if you want to rebuild your tag team division up, you build it around guys like Motor City Machine Guns because they was awesome. When I was there when they debuted on Monday Night Raw. I was there live. I was like, oh shoot, you know what I'm saying? It's just like a shock thing. See what I'm saying? Like that, and to me, it's unfair business practice because these guys could have made money anywhere else and be good and stay there for a long time. Whether AEW, whether TNA, whether New Japan, but yeah, you wanted them to come here and then you let them go. I mean, that's hardcore capitalism right there. And you can make all the excuses you want, Triple H, but it doesn't fly with anybody that's smart enough to see the business of it. Most wrestling fans are not stupid anymore. I don't know the dynamics of the kinds of people that were watching wrestling, but this is a different generation. You know, people are more smarter. This is the info age. We're more smarter about how we see people treated and about the business. Because you guys open up how you do business. You guys have little docu-series about what goes on behind the scenes. So now we're seeing everything. And it sucks. The YS6, like, YS6 should have been doing different things. Again, as a writer, I would have made YS6 amazing. I would have made them tag team. I would have made Bo Dallas eventually become either USA champion or heavyweight champion. I mean, as a writer, I would have Uncle Howdy, aka Bo Dallas, wrestle Cody Rhodes and have him beat Cody Rhodes. Hell yeah. After Cody Rhodes went through what he went through with Randy Orton. And make the storyline go, and then have Cody Rhodes say, "Oh, I couldn't beat Uncle Howley because I wasn't 100%. I mean, after all, I just went through that war with Randy Orton. You know what I'm saying? That shit would have been a dope storyline. That's just me, my mind. Maybe some people disagree, but as someone who used to write stories and grew up watching wrestling, that's how I would have done it as a promoter. I'm really upset as a fan of wrestling, but also as a humanitarian and somebody who believes in fair business practices. Like, it's just not right. You know what I'm saying? It's just not right. And so the YS6, Aleister Black and his wife, the Motor City Machine Gun, and Kyrie, man. Like, Kyrie was the bomb, man. Kyrie was... I wanted to see where that was gonna go. If Kyrie was gonna turn on Oscar and go with Io Sky. Y'all messed it up. Y'all messed it up for no reason. Okay. So now let's talk about and then NXT. You fire a bunch of NXT people. That doesn't make sense. Are you gonna fire a bunch of people from Evolve or whatever the other show is? You got everything is like separated now. You got all these different shows of younger wrestlers, and you have another show showing wrestlers younger than that, teenagers. I don't know what you guys are trying to do, but you're spending money on all this stupid nonsense. That's stupid. From a business standpoint, I would never have all these separate shows And in order to watch these separate shows, you gotta get all these separate apps and pay for them. That's nonsense. That's dumb. That doesn't make sense. Most people are going through it right now, including me. I can't afford. We can't afford to pay for Netflix and ESPN and whatever else you guys want us to watch WWE. That's just plain ignorant and stupid. That's the dumbest thing. I'm sorry. That's the dumbest thing I ever seen. Okay, so now we get into right around the time Vince started releasing wrestlers here and there. You start doing shows in the United Emirates and Saudi Arabia. Now, true, the WWE have done shows in the UK before, a long time ago, when I was still a kid. That is true. But it wasn't like a common theme, right? So from a business standpoint, that's a lot of money you're spending for everybody. TKO, Triple H, I wouldn't spend that much money doing shows in those places. For the simple reason is that Saudi Arabia is a theocracy, and they chop women's heads off in broad daylight in front of crowds, and people cheer them on. It's a brutal regime. It's just as brutal as Iran, and they are a terrible human rights violator. I would never do business just as a human being. I could never see myself doing business with anybody that's connected to the Saudi royal government. And I think that shows how Vince and Triple H view the world. Like, if you're not paying attention to what women and may I remind you that a well-known journalist from Saudi Arabia, when he went against the regime, even though he worked for them, they kidnapped him in Turkey, and the Saudi embassy, and they brutally murdered. There's tapes of his murder, like audio tapes, and I think I came across something where you can access to hear that audio tape, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And so that's the kinds of people you want to do business with. And that says a lot about not just that says a lot about our whole society and our whole government, right? So it's not just in wrestling, but you see it in our government, where we continue to do business with Saudi Arabia. We give them weapons. I think Eric Prince lives in Saudi Arabia now. Was formerly worked for the CIA, lived here, you know. So that says a lot about the kind of human being Vince is, right? Of course, this is the same person that allegedly, cheated on his wife, raped a female wrestler, had her have sex with different guys, and then you fire a whole bunch of people every year. Like that's the kind of person that wouldn't care if a bunch of women had their heads chopped off by the Saudi royal government. You know what I'm saying? And that's what you want to do your shows at. That says a lot about the mind state of these people in TKO and Triple H and Vince. Is to me, they're despicable human beings. Despicable. I hate to say it. I watch wrestling, but it's despicable. It's despicable for what Triple H is doing business with Saudi Arabia like that. And I can't imagine that. I mean, I still can't believe that his wife kind of goes along with this. I know CM Punk don't agree with it. And I'm wondering whether the wrestlers feel a certain way about it, and they're afraid of saying anything. But I think they should say something. I think they all should stay together because I don't think a lot of these wrestlers get along with each other like that, because if they did, right, they would come together and say we are not going to do no more shows in Saudi Arabia. That's it. And Triple H will have to acknowledge that. And they would do the same and I would think that a lot of these wrestlers would do the same after these releases. Kyrie was popular, from what I heard, with everybody in the backstage, and Aleister Black and the Motor City Machine Guns. Like, I would think that all the wrestlers would unite and say, you know what, we're not doing no more shows. We're not going out there tonight. Not until you bring those people back, and not until you bring Karrion Kross back. And if that happened, I'm pretty sure TKO would either sue Triple H, or they would just try to sell the company, or I don't know how that works. They might as well sell WWE now. I think if Vince was trying to sell WWE all along, and that's why he was firing all these people, because basically he was just trying to say, see, now we have no more guys, I'm going to sell them. And he should have sold WWE a long time ago. Hell, I think AEW should buy WWE at this point. Why not? Why not? What's the point of having a WWE? What's the point? Let AEW buy off the WWE and including NXT. Let them buy it all. Keep whatever you want. Might as well. As a wrestling fan, I want to see that. I don't want to see there's no more releases and stuff like that, because what's the point of having a WWE? What's the point? So, but you're more interested in keeping, and Triple H just signed a contract where he stays as de facto chief of operations for WWE. So he doesn't have to worry about getting fired again, right? But everybody else gotta watch their backs now. Does that sound fair to you? For all the people watching who are business people or who understand the business, does that sound fair to you? These wrestlers gave it their all. Some of them were injured when they got let go, right? And and I know there's other releases that I forgot to mention, but the excuse, one of the excuses is, I believe they're saying this, is that they have to make room for the NXT people. But you just fired a bunch of people from NXT, and you fired Karrion Kross the first time after he came up from NXT. He was in NXT, got injured, came back, and then got promoted to WWE. So it's not always about NXT. So that's a lie. You're not releasing these people because you want to make room for NXT. Aleister Black is still fresh. He comes from NXT, but you let him go the first time. So why did you let him go the first time? And so this is BS. This is not about NXT. You'd rather spend your money doing business with a bunch of Saudi Arabian murderers than you do about making sure everybody's fair and getting a push fairly, and having a wrestling challenge or superstars of wrestling like they used to back in the day. You want to spend your money on doing business with a bunch of dirty, religious psychopaths who chop women's heads off and mutilate journalists and kill protesters, just like Iran does. That's foul. That's foul. Here's my prediction. I'm not saying that this is gonna happen, but as I watched Monday Night Raw last night, and I'm seeing it. Question mark: where's the Viking Raiders? They're not pushing them. My prediction is that the WWE will release the Viking Raiders, excuse me, Roxanne Perez, Rusev, Carmelo Anthony, and I'm gonna explain why. I'm gonna explain why. I think it was too soon to let Carmelo lose. I said Carmelo Anthony. I'm thinking basketball right now. You make Carmelo lose too soon his belt. See, maybe I'm wrong. Again, this is just a prediction, my opinion. I'm a little behind on SmackDown, but I'm keeping up. So, but I did hear he lost the belt, and so for some reason I feel like they're gonna release him, even though he hasn't been in the WWE that long. I think he's great, but the way it's so predictable now. I'm 47. I've been watching WWE since '85. So it just becomes predictable to me now what's going to happen. I see everything it was, but again, I can't prove that this is going to happen. But I believe Roxanne Perez is going to get released because they're not using her, and they finally made her. She was injured, but she hasn't been wrestling, even though she's cleared. They finally had her wrestle last night, and the fans were going crazy. They're going to release her because they don't know what to do with her, and they don't want to stop doing business with Saudi Arabia, United Emirates. They don't want to stop do all these other stupid shows. They're and they don't have squash matches anymore. So how do you promote Roxanne Perez? And the fact that they made her wrestle last night, she basically got beat up half the time. When I know Roxanne, even though she's small, I know Roxanne Perez is strong. He's a little fighter. Like, I seen her go like this. Again, I know wrestling is fake. I'm just saying, from a creative standpoint and entertainment, you're not using Roxanne Perez the right way. And I know eventually, it seems like they're gonna make her leave the Judgment Day or something like that. But they're gonna release her. Viking Raiders, they're not using them right. They're not hardly using them. They're gonna release them, and I think that's a shame because, as a creative person and from an entertainment standpoint, Viking Raiders are fun to watch. But again, you don't want to spend money on having squash shows or dark shows, as they call them now. You just want everything fast, and make all this money and take over everything and take over the Mexican side also. You just want to be a global empire wrestling. That's what you care about. You don't care about the actual wrestlers. You don't care about paying them the right way. You don't even want them to have a union. And the WWE is big enough to have a union. I think when the company is that big, yeah, I think you should have a union. I even see some of the side shows, as I call them, the Mexican wrestlers being released as well, because they're not wrestling every week either, including the tag team ones. I see, like, I could see a lot of these Mexican wrestlers being released, and this is sad. This is my prediction. I'm not saying that this is going to happen. I'm just saying the business practice in the WWE is terrible. It's deplorable. You know what I'm saying? And and then you look at the connections. Vince McMahon is friends with Donald Trump, and you see how Donald Trump likes to fire people, move people around, blah blah blah. He wants America. He wants to buy Greenland. That's the mindset that these people have in TKO. They want to buy everything in wrestling. They want to buy this, that, football, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like it just they're more concerned about profit and control over everything than they are about, you know, basically it's like the American government. And the history of America is that we had to fight for our workers' rights. It wasn't just given to us just because we have the Constitution. We had to fight to desegregate the South. So that way, if you can walk through any neighborhood without getting beat up by white people or by the police. I mean, I say white people. I mean racist white people, Ku Klux Klan or whatever. They had to fight for that. You know, everything that we have today, we had to fight for it. It wasn't just given to us. So so that's my prediction, is that there's going to be more releases, and I believe that the Viking Raiders and Roxanne Perez and possibly Carmelo Hayes and some of the Mexican wrestlers are going to be released. Basically, if they do that, especially the tag team Mexican wrestlers that they have, the few that they have, then basically you might as well not have a tag team division. What's the point of having a tag team division? Get rid of it then. Just let people know, because you're doing false advertising, and let people know we are not going to have no more tag teams in the WWE. Just forget about it. Let the people know that. Let the people know that we're not messing with tag teams no more. So that way AEW could grab all the tag teams and we could go and watch AEW more. You know what I'm saying? I don't watch AEW like that. I watch snippets of it on YouTube. I don't want to pay for no more whatever. You know, I'm not rich like that. Now, should there be an investigation at the federal level, or at least where the company is based on in Connecticut? Locally, yeah, I think there should be an investigation, but that's only if somebody goes to the office and files a complaint against the WWE. If one of the wrestlers does it, then it gains traction. But nobody's willing to do that. And federal level, I don't know. But this is entertainment, and people don't take it seriously. It's part of pop culture. But for me, as a progressive, as somebody that was involved in activism a little bit, and used to work for a union, a small union though, seeing it bigger than just pop culture and wrestling, just relating it to how America's run as a business, how businesses are run in this country, I think is wrong. And I think it's bad business, and I think the WWE ratings eventually are going to fall again. And let alone the wrestling, the WrestleMania wasn't that good. It was too short. All the match was like 6 minutes. Let alone the fact that wrestlers are borrowing each other's moves more. There's nothing creative about the wrestling moves, except for a few. And I'm kind of curious to hear how CM Punk feels about it. Because CM Punk is Mr. Pipe Bomb, right? I mean, if you're going to do a pipe bomb for real, hey, might as well be now with these releases. But there's a lot of egos in wrestling, and I don't think CM Punk probably didn't really get along with Karrion Kross or Aleister Black. I don't know. But, if it's wrong is wrong, right? So, in all due seriousness, I think it was just unfair, and it's sad. And it's sad. And I know I hear people making excuses. Well, Kyrie was gonna go back to Japan anyway. I mean, so wait for her to go back to Japan. Maybe I heard people say, Aleister Black was hard to get along with. Then why did you hire him again? Why did you bring him back? Those excuses don't make sense at all. And I think it's getting ugly. I think it's ugly the way they conduct business. It's just ugly. And I don't think any new superstar wrestlers should go to the WWE. If you're watching this video, do not go to the WWE. You have other avenues to become a professional wrestler. You got AEW, you got TNA, you still got Ring of Honor, kinda. You got New Japan, if you know. This other and the smaller wrestling organization. You don't have to. I want to see. Eventually, that's going to happen. Eventually, a lot less wrestlers are going to want to go to WWE, because what's the point? You go there, you work your ass off, and then you might get fired in NXT, or you might get promoted and then get fired a year later. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That's dumb. And Bully Ray should know the truth. He should not say that, because you were there when Triple H slept with the boss's daughter, got with the boss's daughter, married the boss's daughter. Triple H didn't have to worry about getting released, but Test did. Some of the other wrestlers from the Attitude Era did. One guy got injured, his career was ended, but Triple H was good. Does that sound fair to you? You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think it's what that says too is that the ego thing in wrestling is bad, and it's a dirty business. And like I said, the whole creation of wrestling was based on a lie. It was telling people that it was real when in fact it was fake, and a lot of people were gambling on wrestling, for a long time, for 3 decades. You know what I'm saying? 50s, 60s, and 70s, and maybe even before that. So in the very beginning, it was based on a lie. So if it was based on a lie, and Vince did the right thing by saying it was fake, but a lot of guys went around Vince, went along with that lie for a long time, and then they said, okay, yeah, it's fake. So in wrestling, people get injured in wrestling, and for you to get injured and then get released, that's not fair. If there was a union in the WWE, none of this would be happening. And I bet you, I don't know why, but if there was a union in the WWE, if wrestlers they got together, I think we would see like a squash match shows, like Superstars of Wrestling Challenge, because I think wrestlers would demand that, because that actually promotes the wrestler a lot faster than just pushing them and then not knowing what to do to them. You know what I'm saying? Like, from a creative standpoint, those squash shows made more sense than just having Monday Night Raw and SmackDown every week. Every week you got a main event match. Every week. So somebody has to lose. And you got all these superstars, and you know how to book them, and then there's so many live stream shows, what used to be called pay-per-views. Why not just go back to having 3? Why not just go back to having WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Royal Rumble, and then maybe have like a WrestleFest, like they did in '88. That's it, 3 or 4. You don't need all this other stuff, and bring back the traditional Royal Rumble. You know what I'm saying? Because the traditional Royal Rumble makes more sense. I know it looks cool with the new Royal Rumble thing they're doing and all that, but I like the traditional one. I think because you're showcasing your talent. You're not trying to wow people too much. You don't want to do that either. The wow is the wrestlers themselves, not the plastic tube or the moving cage or whatever else they're gonna try to come up with next. You know what I'm saying? Like, the wrestlers are supposed to be the wow. Kyrie was a wow, and you messed it up for her, and you messed it up for wrestling fans, and you messed up your business. So in my opinion, I think the WWE should just sell the company. I know they're not gonna sell it to AEW, but I think AEW should try to buy it. Or let TNA, since you already got a business with TNA, let TNA buy WWE. Why not? You're not doing anything with these great, amazing superstars or wrestlers anyway. You're not doing anything with them. They're very talented, and they deserve more. Kyrie didn't deserve that. Aleister Black and his wife didn't deserve that. Vega, Cameron Cross and his wife didn't deserve that. They're AOP, AOC. Those guys are amazing wrestlers. I love watching them. I love seeing what Karrion Kross is gonna do next. What he's gonna. That's the mystery of his character. You know what I'm saying? Like you ruin that for everybody because of the bottom line. Here's the bottom line: get rid of Saudi Arabia, get rid of United Emirates, get rid of all these other extra live stream shows, and then bring back the squash matches shows. Then you won't be spending so much money, and you won't be worrying about, and make the WWE go private again. How about that? But you don't want to take that. You don't want to do that. They don't want to do that because it's, they're not humane. The business world is not humane. The American society is not humane. That's why we vote for Trump or Hillary or Obama or Bush or support war, because we want war. We don't care about humanity. We don't care about workers' rights. Or you're very naive. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that. You know what I'm saying? Peace. And let's see what happens. My prediction, I'm not saying it's gonna happen. I want to see Roxanne Perez make it. But I'm angry right now that they let go of these wrestlers. Peace.